All right, well, welcome everybody. This is the beginning of the pilot program. We're excited to share with you our kickoff event titled Career Development Beyond Academia. It's going to be a discussion with the Michigan Department of Agricultural and Rural Development. I myself am Gabriela Shirky, and your co-host is Inue Liu. We are the graduate student coordinators for the pilot project. And we're also very grateful for our collaborators and sponsors from MDARD, the Michigan Department of Agricultural and Rural Development, the Graduate School, the College of Arts and Letters Citizen Scholars Program, the College of Social Science, as well as the College of Natural Science. So what is the pilot program exactly? It's a reciprocal program. The pilot project bridges the gap between graduating students and non-academic professionals. Through reciprocal exchanges and a speaker series on career development and diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings, graduate students will prepare themselves for joining the non-academic job market and creating positive social changes. So you can see our little Venn diagram. On the left, we have our MSU initiatives, and on the right, we have our MDARD initiatives. In the MDARD initiatives, that includes our DEI training series, where MSU experts and our participants will be able to engage in non-academic presentations. In the MSU pilot program, we're offering public MSU seminars, and then we're also going to be hosting a summer working group that you are invited to join. If you're interested in joining that, please be watching the chat. We're going to be submitting a link for how to join that by this Friday. Across the board, though, this is going to provide professional development and institutional change. I'm very grateful for our project coordinators, some of which are joining us as panelists today. So I've already introduced myself and Inue. We are the graduate student coordinators of Pilot. We are joined by our MSU supervisor, Dr. Julie Rajewski, as well as our MDARD collaborators here, who are also panelists, Ashley Bettine and Kayleen Shoemaker. Thanks again. Additionally, we acknowledge the significant program development that were provided in the early stages of our program. So thank you, Kenlia Pebbles, who is a PhD candidate in Writing, Rhetoric, and American Cultures, the RAC program, as well as Kayleen, who has been on this the whole time. Thank you so much. She's the communications representative for the Animal Industry Division at MDARD, and she was a former faculty member at RAC. And then also thank you to Dr. Tara Railtz, for a PhD from African History, who graduated very recently. So in the pilot program itself at MSU, what you'll get from this webinar and our continuous webinar series, again, we are going to be helping you bridge that gap between students and the non-academic professionals that you want to meet. Ultimately, our goal is to help our students prepare for the non-academic job market. So what we will provide for you are public webinars that will begin July 11th through August 19th. They'll last approximately 1 hour. This is where we're inviting MDARD specialists to come and speak with us on various topics. But following that, we have a more personal working group, which you can join by the end of this week on Friday. That's where our participants will have one-on-one conversations with MDARD professionals who had just presented. And then we'll also be able to create this community working group of self-reflection, creating accountability reports, and sharing new materials and tasks for the week. So I compare it to a writing group if you've ever joined one of those. It's really rewarding to join this. So please join us by Friday, June 24th. You'll have to apply through Handshake, and we just want to assure you that you're more than welcome to join us. And it's a non-competitive program. You'll also benefit from curated materials and assignments, all of which is going to be shared on our website, linked below, on the graduate school website. So specifically about the pilot program, we're breaking this down into 4 career development seminars. We have the Discover, Research, Implement, and Build stages, of which were adopted from the Beyond the Professoriate program. It's a program that MSU students actually have access to, so if you've heard about it, you can tap into it with us. We're going to go through 4 different webinar series. Each of them is going to be on a Thursday. The first, we will develop a career metric. These are the values, skills, and interests that are going to filter your non-academic search. In the research step, it's going to be called Doing the Research, applying your career metric to identify and attract those non-academic job opportunities. Implement, we will be putting the research to practice. That's focusing your job search and building your non-academic career on July 28th. And then finally, we are going to be building, which is the navigation part, right? We're navigating the non-academic transition process, envisioning your long-term career development after you get that job. That final one will be on August 11th. The branch that we consider as our reciprocal part of this series are the DEI trainings that we're providing to our MDARD colleagues. So we see this as the seed rippling effect for positive social changes. Within our immediate work together, we're going to be discussing those academic skills, our research, being creative, and discussing basic humanity, right? But then our branch off into the MDARD MSU DEI events is where we're going to be able to share that with our non-academic colleagues and ultimately create a ripple change where we can provide some additional concepts to change institutional culture, not just at MDARD, but also at Michigan State University. And ultimately, that positive social change will create a really great rippling effect. All right, so we're ready to get started. Here are our 4 panelists who we are very grateful for joining us today. Again, our event is called Career Development Beyond Academia, and it will be a discussion with MDARD professionals. Our first speaker will be Ashley Bettine, who's recruitment, professional development, and also a DEI officer at MDARD. Then we have Jen Calogero, Assistant State Veterinarian and Animal Industry Division at MDARD. Amber Niles, Export and Compliance Program Specialist. And then we'll wrap up with Kayleen Shoemaker, MDARD Communications Manager. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Ashley. You should be able to automatically share your screen, but just let me know if that's something that we can improve.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Looking good. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Well, good afternoon. It is so nice to meet everyone. Oops, let me turn off my devices, but it's great to be here today. And I just wanted to thank, everybody that has been working on this to build it into MDARD's speaker series this summer and collaborating with MSU. So thank you to everyone who's been kind of building that for be able to record, to be able to speak in front of you today, to be able to get this content out. It's such an important thing. But I'm going to dig right in and start with my journey. I was a 2008 graduate of MSU, so go green, 100%. I grew up around East Lansing. I knew I wanted to go to MSU. I did early acceptance, not for any other reason than because I knew. And then I graduated in 2008 with a psychology degree. I'll come back to that in a little bit. I then worked my way through being a college advisor. I worked with students and tutor. I taught developmental education classes at Baker College, and that's where I earned my industrial organizational psychology graduate degree. I actually went on from there to become an associate director of student development and employer relations at MSU's, what it was the Lear Career Center at the time when I worked there. It is now the Palmer Career Center at the Business College. And so I'm here today to talk. I've got a lot to talk about. I'm going to weave in different tips on career development along with my own journey and my own experiences. But I spent almost 7 years working with students in building their career development paths, as well as working with employers to understand their recruiting activities, their strategies, and what are the best ways and the things that they're looking for in students as they're being connected to their careers. So today, I now am at the MDARD, where I am the Recruitment and Professional Development and DEI Officer for the department. This is a brand new role. I've been in the role for about 2.5 years, so I've been really building what this means for MDARD. And I'm going to get into each one of these pieces a little bit deeper, but just kind of an overview of what my journey looks like and what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to touch back onto 2008. Does anybody want to come off mute or throw in a chat or anything? What happened in 2008? Does anyone remember or know why I might have been part of something pretty deep in terms of finding a job in 2008? I don't know if I can even see chat, so maybe people are.
Yeah, I would.
Recession.
If you want to unmute yourself, jump in.
Yeah, jump in. I see it in chat. It's the recession. The recession, 100%. I graduated in 2008 with a degree at a time where there were no jobs, and that's what people were telling me. So I also, side note, bought a home in 2007. So went underwater in that home for about 8 years before I could get out of that. So I'm part of a group of people who actually experienced getting a degree and not knowing at all what to do, because when we talk about what is a metric or a list of criteria to evaluate jobs, my careers class at MSU actually pulled up what was then my Spartan Career, now is Handshake, and said, hey, check it out. Look at all these positions. They don't make enough money for you to sustain life on. You should go back to school. And I will forever remember going into a careers class and that person telling me, like, you're just really not going to find a job right now. I don't think anyone knew at the time what to do about this, right? We went into a recession. It was 2008, it was right on the cusp, like things were really happening in terms of a recession. It wasn't just starting. And there were just not any jobs, especially for a psychology degree, a social science degree, a non, real, I shouldn't say they're very important, but, at the time, a lot of the time, science, hard sciences, technology, those were the things that were coming up and coming. So in terms of what types of career or metrics or criteria in terms to evaluate jobs, I did not have any at the time. My thought was go back to school, which is why what you see up there is a Spanish degree. So I actually I decided in 2008 that I had all these credits in Spanish. I would love to expand my skill set. And so I did, and I took another year of school, and I went to have a study abroad, and this will kind of tie into what I'm going to talk about soon, and I expanded my skill set. And I thought, let me just do something that I had already taken many years of Spanish. Actually all of my electives in my psychology degree, I took in Spanish. So I was in my 300 level classes. I was like, let me just expand my skill set. Let's see what happens. So in the meantime, I also started a part-time job at Baker College. My mom worked there, and she said, why don't you start helping students? And I was like, okay. I had 3 jobs at the time, by the way. I actually had never not had 3 jobs up until just maybe 3 to 4 years ago. And that is how a recession and something like that can affect people, like down the line, right? I told you I bought a house, like we went underwater. My husband and I were trying to figure out, my husband and I always had 3 jobs. That was just what we did, because my husband also graduated around this time. So we both were looking for jobs. Like, what do we do? It was just not an easy track the way that it seems to be now, where we can just find things. Although the market has went down with COVID, so we up and down. But then the market stayed pretty stable after the recession for about 9 years. So it's like people could find jobs. And I was like, this is amazing. So in the meantime, I got this other job, and I learned that I really loved helping people figure themselves out the way that I was working on figuring myself out. I just had a unique story. I couldn't figure out what to do. So I was able to relate and resonate with students, and it kind of ignited this passion in me. Like, I can do this, right? I can help people figure themselves out because I'm working overtime trying to figure myself out. So here's the thing that I really focused on was identifying skills, values, and interests. It was many jobs, lots of things. I was doing a lot of different things. Like I said, I held 3 different jobs. My husband held 3 different jobs at one time. None of them were full-time. None of them made sense to be full-time. My husband did have a full-time job. Mine did not. I just couldn't find anything that that was right for me. I didn't want to just take any full-time job. I wanted to take a full-time job that was going to align with my skill sets and my career path. So I didn't. I just worked 3 part-time jobs, and I kind of moved along that matter. So here's the thing. When you do a lot of jobs, you end up getting, I was a Jane, I call it Jane of all trades, right? I learned a lot of things, but I was a master of none. I literally was like, I could do that, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that. Okay, I'm learning all these things. I didn't really have one skill set, which is why when I went back to school to get a Spanish degree, it really made sense for me to hone in, right? So that is the one thing, that is the first point that I'd like to kind of point out is you can be a jack of all trades and you can know a lot of things. But what I started to do was really taking each skill set and honing in. I want to learn more. I want to figure out how I can be better at X. And then I would build that skill set. And then I'd go, okay, I have this skill set too. I know a little bit about this. What can I do to learn more about that? And what I started to do is build my skill set exponentially, right? Because instead of just saying I experienced this, I experienced that, I would say, well, I experienced this one thing. It was really interesting. I need to kind of move forward with that. So honing into these skills to become a master of all. And that takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort. And what I will say, point number two, thought number two, this is an unpopular thought, by the way, so totally throw it out if you hate this thought. But I hear this a lot. I hear a lot of people tell me, I need to set boundaries. I need to learn how to say no. And I would say if I had said no, I would never have become what I consider a master of all my skills. And so I said yes to everything, things that I hated, things that I just like, I don't want to do this. It sounds like so much work. I can't. But I said yes, because I'm here to build my skill set. I learned that I needed to build my skill set because I was not going to get a job that would fit me if I didn't do so. So what I did was job search strategy, go back to school. It was anything for me. For me, it was like, I just couldn't find a job that made sense. So I went back to school. I did get my master's degree. So I do have 3 degrees. And all of them helped me kind of hit on skill sets that were small. And that's where I started to figure out what skill sets do I want to hone in on. How did you do this? Well, for me, a job search strategy was never, it was always about surviving. And that sounds very cliche, but I at that time could not think about, does this align with me? I knew I wanted that down the line, but financially I needed to stay afloat. We were in a recession. I had bought a house in 2007. Everything was just kind of going up and down. We had to stay financially afloat. So becoming a master of all, I really focused in on how do I continue to build upon the skills that I'm learning. I didn't really look for jobs. I did, but I didn't have a strategy. I was like, I need to stay afloat. I need to keep my skill sets going. And if something comes along, I will do it. I did apply to a few jobs here and there, but I wasn't ready. So the last couple things that I want to mention here as we look at like this piece of my journey, networking is so important. I didn't know it at the time. I know you probably hear this all the time, but your network is so important. And it's not just about connecting with the person to say, how do I get this job? It's connecting with the person to get experience on a skill set that you might have. It might be connecting with somebody to just get, their support. Might have some resources they could provide you. They might be able to make a connection with the person. They might see something that's interesting about you. Your network is important. And it's not about your network as, this is my network as it relates to my job search. It's what is your network as it relates to how you're being built as a person, as a whole, so that you can become the obvious choice. So that kind of leads into my last point on this slide, which is I did not apply unless I was 100% sure I was the obvious choice for that job. So I have a kind of a weird, different background in that I did not apply to very many jobs. I wasn't going to apply to 100 jobs. I wasn't going to get those jobs. I knew that. I kind of knew, okay, I'm not really, I can see I'm not qualified for this here. I can see that I don't have the experience there. I can see that there's not many jobs in my field. I can see that. So I just didn't put the effort into building my resume in that way and continuing to apply. I spent my time on building my skill set in the real life experience that I was building so that when that opportunity came along, I was that obvious person. And that worked for me. And I'll talk about that. Now, my husband was opposite. Side note, he applied to like 50 to 100 jobs and just got rejected 100 times. Like he just got so much rejection. That's okay. We talk about it all the time. He's in a good spot now. He found his space and he found it through networking as well. So it was interesting. All right. So the jobs. I've had 2 jobs. I've had 3 jobs, but 2 full-time jobs. I want to start by saying I did not get my full-time opportunity at MSU until I was 26 years old. It took all that time. I was working 3 jobs. I never really figured out what it was that I really wanted to do. And again, I just didn't apply everywhere. I wanted to make sure that my skill sets kind of honed in. It was a cold application. Nobody connected me. I did not have my network, use me in this way to find my job search, but I did have my network backing my skill sets, right? Like all the people I had met, giving me feedback, giving me resources, telling me this part about you is really great. This part about you, think about, hone in, right? And so I applied to this role at MSU, and it did not make a lot of money, and it did not do all the things that I had thought, but it was an opportunity, and I could tell it was a career advisor, and that's my passion, right? I could tell. I was working with students for 6 years before that. I knew that I wanted to be with students. It took all that time to figure that out. And I became a master of all. So I knew when I looked at that job, I was like, I did that, I did that, I did that, I've done that, I can do that, I did that, So I went through that job description, and I didn't just say, oh, I can do this job. I went through and I said, I have a story that aligns here. I have a story that aligns here. It took me all that time, and I was picking apart pieces, and I found this role. And so I applied, and I got the job, and I was kind of stunned because growing up in a space or being in a space where, you're told, jobs are few and far between, and you see your husband apply to 100 jobs and it just wasn't working. I was excited. And it's because I went in and I was like, any question they asked, any single question, I was like, I have something for that because I've done it. And I honed in, and I became a master in those things. So, moving into some more career opportunities, I worked there for 6 years, and I doubled down. I said yes to everything. I was burnt out at times. But I'll tell you what, I said, okay, I'm now here. I became a master at all the things I feel like I can in the role I was. Now I'm here, and I have this whole platter of opportunities in front of me. What am I going to hone in on, right? I could be kind of good at all these things, and I have things that I'm uncomfortable with. Focus on those uncomfortable pieces. And that's what I did. So for that 6 to 7 years, I took every opportunity I could to learn everything I could about career development and recruiting. And that's when you continue to build your skill set, right? And it's sort of this like dance, right? So I'm going to now continue to build my skills. I said yes to everything I possibly could have. I was on all the teams. I learned all the things. I worked with lots of people. I did things across MSU. I was involved in programs I probably would never have been involved in because I would get, my network grew so much. They were like, come, help us. And I'm like, yes, I want to learn more. So it all sounds very cliche, but this is how I worked through it. And this is a good way for you to kind of work through yours as well. So then I landed into MDARD, and this is how this happened. I was never going to leave MSU. There were so many opportunities. I was good. But I did have a person that I was talking to about my role. And they said, I think there's a role that's coming up in my department that might be good for you. And they sent me this job. And I did the thing that I did with MSU. I said, I can do that. I can do that. I did that. I've done this. I've done that. I've done that. I was like, this role was written for me. But that wasn't true. It's just that I had built my skill sets in a way that was so encompassing that I looked at that role and I was like, I could get this job, right? Remember, I don't apply for jobs unless I know like 95%. And I said, I can get this job. There's nothing on this list that I haven't had some hand in somewhere, some story that I can pull out. So I applied, and thanks to my network, again, the network that I built, this was a personal connection. This was not a professional connection. This was just something that I was talking to about from a personal connection. And they just said, you might be good for this role. And with, everything that happened, I got the job. And so I've applied to a total of 3 jobs in my whole career. And that's not because I didn't, that's because, again, like I was not going to apply to a job that I was not sure that I could be that obvious choice. And so point is really look at roles, really look at the jobs that you're looking at and decide, like, do your skill sets align? Have you built yourself to become that obvious choice for this role? So that is actually, I know I didn't want to, I don't know how much time check, Gabriella, I guess I'm asking, how much time do I have left? We're pretty much there.
I'd say we should probably move on to the next speaker when you get a chance.
All right, no problem. So actually that was my last slide, and I just wanted to thank you. That's why I was checking. But thank you for allowing me to share my story, but also I will make sure that, and I think they'll make sure that you have my contact information, so that if you'd like to chat, like to talk more, happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you for sharing that. I think we can go ahead and bounce off to the next speaker. Jen Calogero, do you want to get us started on what you have to say?
Yes, I'd be more than happy to. Let me try to share my screen with me. So bear with me as I do that.
You got it.
Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you. Today, I'm really excited to be joining. As indicated, I'm Jen Calogero. I'm one of the assistant state veterinarians, and I'm the animal welfare and CWD coordinator for the animal industry division within MDARD. So I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to really go through my story here, and then pick up little pieces and tidbits, but then at the end, I've got quite a bit of little key highlights that I'd like to really focus in on. I find it a little interesting because I'm going to highlight and emphasize slightly different things that Ashley just did. So I think this is a great opportunity for folks to really see the difference as to how what I'm taking away from my story may differ from Ashley. And I think that's what is key here, is that we're all different, and what works for one may not work for everyone else. So I am a Michigander. I was born and raised in Michigan. I love everything that Michigan has to offer, from our lakes, state parks, the Upper Peninsula, exploring the Lower Peninsula. So I am a true Michigander. And I was your traditional little kid, and I always wanted to be a veterinarian. I grew up thinking I want to be that veterinarian. I went, I had dogs and cats and guinea pigs and frogs, and I mean, you name it. Growing up, I had all those pets, and I was like, I want to be a veterinarian. But I grew up in Oakland County, so I didn't grow up on a farm or anything. And so at the time, I thought I just wanted to be a dog and cat veterinarian because that's all I knew. But I also was like, okay, I'm determined here. I want to be a veterinarian. Where to go? Love Michigan. Want to be a veterinarian? Michigan State. And so I applied and I was accepted. So I started my undergrad career at Michigan State. I majored in animal science within the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. And within there, I was like, oh my gosh, look, there's farm animals now too. So I fell in love with animal science and all of everything that has to offer from a variety, and knew that veterinary medicine could be a variety of different paths that you could take. In addition to farm animals, I also started volunteering in a research lab. I was similar to Ashley. I grabbed at any opportunity I could during undergrad because I knew how competitive it was to apply to veterinary school. And one of the opportunities that presented itself was volunteering in a research lab that focused on ticks and mosquitoes. May not be everyone's cup of tea, but I loved it. I fell in love with that. And this really incorporated the One Health concept of medicine, which incorporates humans, animals, and the environment, and the intersection between all of them. And so within that, that's where I was like, oh my gosh, this is my passion. It's the One Health concept of medicine. So I ended up during my undergrad applying to veterinary school, and I was accepted at Michigan State. But I also had this One Health concept of medicine in the back of my mind. And I really enjoyed what I was doing for the research lab. Volunteer position turned into a job, and during undergrad. Well, then I was like, well, similar to, okay, I can relate to Ashley here. Ashley had 3 different jobs. I was like, oh, I can do 2 different things. I can earn 2 doctorate degrees at the same time. Why not? And so I applied to veterinary school and I was accepted. So I started Michigan State within the College of Veterinary Medicine, earning my doctorate of veterinary medicine. But at the same time, I really wanted to incorporate this One Health concept of medicine to the next level. So I applied for my PhD and I was accepted within the Comparative Medicine Integrative Biology department within the College of Veterinary Medicine. So I started a dual DVM PhD program. So I started both veterinary school and my PhD at the same time. My PhD focused on Lyme disease ecology within Michigan. So again, ticks. And that quickly became my life between veterinary school and my PhD. So that's not a typical path at all, is doing both a DVM and a PhD. I consider it not the wrong way, just an alternate way. And you'll see this theme throughout my path, is that just because most people don't take it this way does not mean this is a path that you should not travel. So earning a degree in veterinary medicine typically takes 4 years after your undergrad. So it's typically 8 years, and then you can go on for advanced additional schooling after that. But because I did both a DVM and a PhD at the same time, I ended up taking a year off from veterinary school to entirely work on my field work within for focusing on Lyme disease. So I was a tick chick and tick hunter. I needed to spend my time catching those small animals looking for ticks. And so I did that for that year off, and then I went back to veterinary school and ended up graduating from veterinary school while still working on my Lyme disease ecology research. So again, it was keeping myself busy working on both of those degrees at the same time. That was my life for over 6 years. Never a dull moment. I did end up graduating from veterinary school while I was working on writing up my dissertation. Again, I'm seeing a common theme here with Ashley. I was like, oh, okay, well, just working on my PhD, which I do not undermine because this is a full-time job, believe me. I was like, I could also start expanding my veterinary knowledge and experience too. So I did an internship with the National Park Service Wildlife Health Branch. Networking, you're going to see here, because I incorporated my experience from veterinary school and I networked, which led me to a year-long internship, which was based out in Fort Collins, Colorado. So I did this internship focusing on wildlife ecology while I was working on writing up my dissertation. After that year of the internship, I ended up working as a wildlife biologist for 2 years at Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore for the National Park Service. So I worked there, finished up my PhD, and then an opportunity presented itself to work for the state of Michigan with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. And so I ended up taking that position and worked as a veterinary epidemiology, focusing on zoonotic diseases, so diseases that affect both humans and animals. So for example, rabies. So an animal could get rabies, a human could get rabies. And so, or swine flu, for example. So if a pig is sick, and if it could get the human sick if people do come in close contact. So there are diseases that animals can have and cause people to get sick. And that's exactly what I was focusing on within the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. But this was the human aspect. So again, in the back of my mind, I really enjoy this One Health concept of medicine. So from the National Park Service, I was really focused on the environment and wildlife. And then I could bring in now with Health and Human Services, the human aspect. And so I jumped on that opportunity and I worked there for a few years. Again, really focusing on the epidemiology and the zoonotic nature of a lot of diseases. Then a position appeared within and presented itself within Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. And this was a cervid and small ruminant program manager position. And so the cervid meaning deer, elk, reindeer, etc., small ruminants, sheep, goats. And I was like, oh, this will take this One Health concept of medicine, do a full circle here, if you will. And I had my wildlife environment experience, I had my human experience, and then I really wanted to hone in on the animal experience. And I thought this would be a great opportunity. And so I jumped at that and I was accepted to be that program manager for the animal industry division. And I worked there in that position for 2 years until I was promoted to assistant state veterinarian. And that's where I currently am right now and thoroughly enjoy and love my job. I'm gonna focus on a couple of reminders here, and I'm trying to purposely, I wanted to go through this journey pretty quickly because I was trying to hopefully give us time for quite a bit of discussion. So I will focus on a key reminders or highlights right now, and then hopefully give some time back in order to have that discussion, because I really think that that's where hopefully we can have quite a bit of back and forth nature. Keep an open mind. Look for unique opportunities. You will not know it until you try it. Just because you see something and you were like, I don't know if I can do that, keep an open mind, try it. See if you, in order to really get that experience, maybe you've got to try something a little bit outside of your comfort zone. You can have the best of two worlds. Do not limit yourself. So as indicated, I really wanted to have that One Health concept. I wanted to be a veterinarian, so I ended up doing both. You can have the best of both worlds. So my point here is, if you see something and you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know how I can do this, try it. Talk to folks. See if there could be a way that you could incorporate it. If you have something in the back of your mind that you would like to try, start talking to folks. Do not limit yourself. Mentorship is key. I think this is really important, not only for trying to get experience here, but also when applying for positions. So I worked quite a bit I worked for the federal government and for the state government. And I know when I applied for both of those positions, it was really important to me to have some kind of mentorship, especially with applying, especially with the federal government system to apply to those positions. It's just a matter of getting that application just right in order to make it through to actually talk to a human. And so I think the mentorship part is key in trying to just, see and talk to folks and tell them your story. You never know. I mean, I can usually find some kind of commonality between two people. See if you can start getting that connection. Shadow and or talk to current employees. I did quite a bit of shadowing. That's very common in the veterinary field. It may not be for everyone, but talking to current employees goes to any field. And so I did talk to a couple of employees before I applied to MDARD. I wanted to make sure the environment was going to be a good fit for me. I wanted to make sure that this position would work well. It wasn't this, I wasn't talking to the current position, who held the current position, but I really wanted to get an idea as to what I potentially could be walking into. And so I reached out and talked to a couple employees, and I was like, okay, this does seem like it could be a good fit. And so that really did set me, so like, okay, I'm really confident, and I really would like to see if I could, step my foot in that position. A common theme here, network, build those relationships. I ended up through my PhD building quite a bit of relationships with folks. I worked very closely with folks with the National Park Service. I worked very closely with folks from Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and this came a full circle. I'm going to mention one little thing here. During my veterinary degree, we had to do clinical rotations. And you had to go out and get this experience. And so it was a 3-week rotation, and one of these rotations was a required experience, and I ended up working with a veterinarian, shadowing them, working in their clinic for 3 weeks. And I was like, okay, this is great. I really, I appreciate this, but thinking in the back of my mind, okay, this is not exactly the theme I wanted to go here. I don't think I'm going to ever per se like need this quote unquote experience because I'm earning my PhD. Like I just didn't see, I was like, okay, well, I didn't really want to work in the small animal field anymore. But this had they did some large animal too, but they also worked with deer, and they were a deer veterinarian. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool, but when in the world would I ever become a deer veterinarian? When would I ever need to know anything about deer? Well, lo and behold, when I applied for the position with Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, the position was for the CERVID program manager. So that was deer. And who is that lead veterinarian? Lo and behold, it's that veterinarian that I shadowed and spent 3 weeks with. Well, full circle there. Good thing that, I had that positive relationship and that networking, and, really could build that connection again. You never know when things are going to circle back with you. At that point, when I was a vet student, I was thinking, thank you very much, Dr. So-and-so. I appreciate this, but in the back of my mind thinking, I don't know how we're going to ever interact again. Well, it came back a few years later. So really keep that in the back of your mind. Don't burn bridges if at all possible, and really, build those relationships, because you never know when you're going to need them. Practice interviewing. is another important thing that I would encourage. And this can be practiced in a variety of different settings. You could do it with colleagues, with peers. I know there's quite a bit of opportunities at Michigan State for practice interviewing experience, but you don't become well at it or very good at it unless if you practice. It's one of those skills that you just need to keep that in the back of your mind and keep that up. It does, one of those skills, if you don't use those skills, it dwindles. Well, interviewing also may dwindle. So I would encourage you, if you're thinking about applying for a job or thinking about changing jobs, try to brush off those skills and practice. Which leads me to, which is somewhat different than what Ashley may have encouraged. I'm going to go with the mindset of just apply. If something does spark your interest and you think, oh my goodness, I could potentially see myself in this position, apply. All they can say is no. So I guess maybe I'm in the mindset of Ashley's husband. All they can say is no. But at the same time, maybe they're just going to give you an interview and you can say thank you, because that'll give you practice with your interview skills too. So, and it would give you practice for applying and getting that resume and getting everything going through those skills. So I'm slightly different than Ashley in that regard, because I think that has worked for me. And I think that, the mentorship that I have provided to folks, it does seem to work in that regard, but everyone's different. And I think that if you want to try it, give it a go, keep that open mind, and make sure not to limit yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and just, hopefully have opportunities for questions, but you should be able to get my contact information through Gabriella. Hopefully you can share that. If not, people can scribble it down right now. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jen. It's really awesome to hear some contrasting experiences as well as some overlapping suggestions and recommendations for folks. And absolutely, we are going to share a PDF of this presentation. It's going to be uploaded to our website as well, so this contact information is available to everybody at the end. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Amber Niels. You can go ahead and get started for us. Thank you again, everybody, for jumping in.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me and see my screen? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. So thank you for having me as well. I was a little bit relieved to hear that Ashley and Jen, both of your experiences were a little bit not, I thought I was the only one that was kind of a meandering type of situation. But so my name is Amber Niles, and I got my PhD at MSU as well. And I'm now the export and compliance specialist for the Michigan Department of Agriculture in the pesticide and plant pest management division. And I recently started this role. For the last 5.5 years, I've been working in the same department and division as a field inspector, which is a very fun job. So here, let me get my slides. So my journey, like I said, is a very meandering one, and I kind of was all over the place. When I grew up in a small town in Western New York, where there's more cows than people. I was the first person in my family to attend college. My mom didn't even finish high school. My dad went right out into the Navy, and so when I said I wanted to go to college, they were like, "Wow, how do you do that? We haven't been saving." There was no experience whatsoever in that. So. And at the time, I was interested in basically everything growing up. And I repeatedly heard people say, "Oh, just follow your passion." What's your passion? Work in your passion. And I was like, oh God, I don't have one, because I liked everything. And so I don't know, it was comforting to me to eventually hear that other people were like, not everyone has a passion that's like, I love to paint, I love children. Your passion can just be helping people. And so that's kind of where I land. I just wanted a job where I could eventually work in helping people. So that was kind of counter to my staying in school for so as long as I did, because I felt like being really selfish while I was in school and not being in the workforce and contributing. But I did stay in school for a very long time. So I graduated high school in 2003, and I finally graduated with my PhD in 2016. So I started my job before I finished writing my dissertation. So right out of high school, I wanted to be a mason for a little while. And then I thought I'd get an accounting degree. I have an associate's degree in accounting. I worked as a bookkeeper. I then went I had an internship with Greenpeace. I thought, oh, I'm really interested in environmental work. And so I had a little bit of taste of organizing for environmental justice, which was not my thing. I'm a very shy person. And so I thought maybe science, maybe you just got to get that background in science, and I can kind of work with the research that will then help the people that want to make that great change. And so I went back to school for a bachelor's in biology. Was interested in everything biology. Then you have to, narrow it down within biology. What are you going to work on? And I took classes in all different types of biologies, and finally landed in plant science, and I loved plant pathology. I thought this is where I could really help, agricultural issues with plant diseases. That's like a thing that as climate change comes along, we're going to be dealing with more diseases. That's where I can make my mark and really help the world. And so at the end of that bachelor's degree, as the first person to ever go to college, I had never even imagined graduate school was an option for me. But my advisor at the time was like, you can get a graduate school, graduate research assistantship, and they'll basically pay for your education and give you a stipend. And I was like, what? That's crazy. And so I did that, and I got to go to MSU and studied ginseng diseases, which was a very interesting topic, but also a very tiny little section of science, and so that kind of scared me. Am I pigeonholing myself into, like, when people at a party come up and say, oh, what do you do? I was like, oh, I research this obscure crop that only like 10 people in the country grow. So I wanted to open my world back up, and I knew that research wasn't really my forte. And so I just my strategy for a job search was I wanted to cast a wide net. I wanted to see what was even out there. What kind of people are hiring plant pathologists besides academic research roles. And so with that, and keeping an open mind, like Jen said, there are jobs out there that are perfect for you that you don't even know exist. When I found out that there was a nursery inspector job where I could live in northern Michigan, work from home, travel around 14 counties and look at plants all day and just diagnose diseases, I was like, huh, sign me up. That's amazing. I didn't know that was a thing. And then when I meet people at parties and I tell them that's what my job, they're like, that's a thing, what? So, don't know what you're gonna find. So the criteria, again, this was kind of a question that I laughed at because I was like, I don't know, did I have criteria? But when I thought about it, I did. And so location was important for me. Like I said, I grew up in Western New York in a small town, and I'd been living in Lansing for quite a while, going to school. I like Lansing, but I was more interested in going back to a smaller town feel, either back to Western New York, or I was like, living in Michigan. Northern Michigan is a beautiful place. So I said, I'm either going to move back to Western New York or up north. And that's something that I think a lot of people let their location go. I know that's what I heard from a lot of my mentors, was like, oh, just go where the jobs are. Maybe you have to live in downtown Detroit. Maybe you want to live in downtown Detroit, but I'm just saying, like, maybe we don't always need to let that limit us for what we want, because you want to keep in mind your quality of life and what's going to be best for your lifestyle, because your job is only 1/3 of your life and you want to be happy. So I really liked the fact that I had an field aspect, so I could get outside, and the fact that I could have remote work. I wanted my subjects to be stimulating, and the fact that the work at Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development was everything. It wasn't just ginseng diseases, it was plant disease, it was insects, it was invasive species, it was fertilizer. Yeah, I learned there's just like opens up to so many different things, and every single day I was learning new things, and I wanted that. And I know everyone's experience in grad school is different, but my experience in grad school was like, welcome to grad school, good luck. There was no training really. And that I don't like to not know what I'm doing and fail. And I know that's a learning experience, but I knew that I wanted a job that would value training and getting people up to speed and make them feel confident and know what they can do. And then you can build from there to make things better instead of like digging yourself out of a hole for 10 years. A supportive and inclusive culture. I wanted to be able to feel like I was making an impact and have an opportunity for growth. And I don't mean growth just in moving up in salary, but growth as in like, what can I help, like I'll grow personally, and how can I help grow the division and the people around me and stuff like that. So when I was identifying my skills, what I used, like everyone else said, was feedback from my mentors and my peers, but that was only about 40%. What I like to do is listen to my own feelings and how confident I am in a particular skill set. And so some people might say, Amber, you're really good at technical writing. And I'm like, I don't feel confident in technical writing. So maybe I don't want to, step out of my comfort zone 100% and get a job in technical writing. That could be a piece, but you want to focus where you feel confident and skilled. So yeah, when I was evaluating pathways that align with those skill sets, something that's important to keep in mind is always to read the position descriptions carefully. And I know with the state of Michigan, some of those position descriptions are very lengthy and difficult to read, but it gives you a really good idea of what you'll actually be doing on the day-to-day. Like Jen, I asked to speak to people in the role or similar roles or working for that division if I could. And that was helped by my network. You can't just say, hey, I'm applying for this job, give me the phone number of one of your employees. That's not really, maybe you can for some, but I don't think that it's that easy for a lot of roles. But I learned about people who worked at MDARD, and I was able to get their phone number and talk to them and find out what the culture was like, and then also research online. And that's how I found out a lot about the little projects that are involved in the pesticide and plant pest management. There's a lot of information out there. I think that might be my last slide, but I did jot down a couple of things as other people were talking. I wanted to touch on. Ashley said she doesn't like to apply unless she knows 95% that she's going to get the job. And I know where that I would like to be that way, but I kind of have applied for tons and tons of things and been rejected a lot of times, and it hurts. But I think that rejection equals growth, and you learn like, oh, I thought I was perfect for that job, and this is why I'm not, and this is where I need to focus if I want a job similar to that. Or you realize, whew, I dodged a bullet. I did not want that job. And you identify what you didn't actually want about that job that you had convinced yourself that you did because you wanted the job so badly on your little cloud that you were in. So keep that in mind. If you do want to put yourself out for the rejection, there is some value there. And then networking, I heard so many people say network. And I was always like, what does that mean? And how do I do it? Like, give me the step-to-step guide to network. And there isn't one. And it's extra hard for someone who's an introvert, which I am, because I just want to go to a conference and then go to my room and eat dinner in my bed and go to bed. Like, I do not want to read, but for me, what that has meant is just stepping out of your comfort zone and putting yourself like in the room, even if that just means you're like, yes, I want to be there. You might surprise yourself and have a really good idea, and you get the attention of someone, and then they reach out to you, and you make those connections really organically. So I wish that someone had told me earlier in life that networking is not like putting on a power suit and going to like a business for women event in downtown or something. It's every little piece of interactions that you have. So I think that's all I had.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Amber. I love the insight on this 40-60 rule, 40% listening to the feedback on what others do. I know that Inyo and I have talked about this in our writing group with Ken Leah, where it's like you have your self-perception and like who you think you are and what you think you're good at, but you might not see what others see, right? So that was some great advice. All right, we are going to pass it over to Kayleen for another 15-minute presentation. We're running a little bit over schedule, but it's okay. We'll still wind up with a good 15-minute Q&A at the end. All right, take it away, Kayleen.
All right, so like everyone else here, I just want to check that we can hear me and see my screen.
Looking good. Yeah.
And I will make it actually a slideshow. All right. So as you can tell, at MDARD, we all have the same PowerPoint template. Hey, always good to be consistent, but here I just wanted to summarize up my career path. So I actually started wanting to be a secondary education teacher, specifically in English. So that would mean teaching students from 6th to 12th grade. And, you know, I did try to pursue that, but I got some unexpected opportunities, which immediately put me into grad school after I graduated with my bachelor's degree in English education. And I kind of started teaching at the college level with getting a graduate assistantship as I did to Central Michigan University. And that kind of set my career trajectory in a different path. And then I was able to, graduate with my master's degree and just, continue teaching writing and composition. And I was able to get a lot of fixed term positions, particularly at the start, because like you, Ashley, I kind of was entering that career field right around the recession time. So I graduated in 2007 with my bachelor's degree. I graduated in 2009 with my master's degree. And it's just kind of like, where can I go? Who will hire me? How can I continue to do this thing and, survive in the world and all that sort of good stuff. So, as I said, I was able to piece together a lot of fixed term positions. So I worked at Saginaw Valley for a little bit and CMU for a little bit. I was working at both of them at the same time because it's like I would get 2 classes here and like 2 classes there and like try to create a full-time schedule out of that. And then I was able to lock on for a longer term, so to speak, at CMU. And then I was able to transfer over to MSU and teach first year writing over there. So I had a lot of different experiences in academia. But also with academia and some of the unpredictable nature or just kind of the on-off of the schedule that you can have. I also had so many side jobs at the same time, which was actually quite valuable because it allowed me to like see different things, hone that skill set, as Ashley had mentioned before, and just get exposure to trying different things. And that kind of led to, what I am currently doing. So currently I am the communication representative for the animal industry division at MDARD, which I always get asked the question of like, well, what does that mean? Again, like, what do you do? So I sum it up as I write about animals and animal health related topics for, a variety of different audiences. So we, write to whether it's veterinarians or the general public or, a specific group of producers or, any combination thereof is what we are, putting together on a day-to-day basis. And when it comes to actually writing and presenting that information, it pulls up on a whole bunch of different skills, which I was able to hone through all of my experience that I had in education. So I guess what was the most difficult for me about making that transition from education to a completely different industry was just, how exactly do I, present these skills and show exactly, that I can do these tasks and how do, I market that? How do I try to communicate that? And also, what do I really want out of this job? Because as an academic, you do anything and everything, you're a manager and a supervisor and you write and you research and, you just try to package information and ideas in so many different ways. So I really had to take a moment and think about, what exactly was it from, education and teaching that I had liked so much that I wanted to continue on in a different way. And just overall, I was very motivated to make that transition out of academics into a different type of career field, because I just wanted more room to grow. And what I guess was the most troubling to me about academics was just kind of the lack of job security that I got as a fixed term faculty person, because you would only get 1, 2, or at most 3-year contracts at a time. So you always felt like you were fighting for your job and fighting for your position, which just got exhausting after a while. And also, I always felt like I was teaching the same thing. And that was just a little bit too repetitious. And, I just wanted, more variety. What I really liked about teaching was, or just education in general, was being able to, maybe find solutions to new challenges, and, to be able to kind of, just work those out and, find a solution, or, find something new out about it, or just whatever the case was. And after you teach the same class about 10 times, you kind of run out of things to research and think and, continue to write about. So, there's always a way to improve yourself, but sometimes it's like, well, is that really worth it at the end of the day? So that's why I was really trying to look for, a different way to use those very similar skills to really capitalize on what I enjoyed the most, and, just take a new path with those skills. And being in the animal industry division, animals punctuate my life. So we have some shelter kittens there for you to enjoy. But I also just wanted to throw in a few quick comments for, the job market, because, it is quite unfriendly from time to time. And I did also, even though I thought I was good for, like that specific job, that specific position that I was applying for, I didn't apply to a job where, I thought that I couldn't make it work in some way, shape, or form. But at the same time, with having, so many kind of flexible, adaptable skills with being an academic, that's a pretty wide and broad net. So it's just kind of like, how do you narrow it down and, really kind of you make sure that your efforts are most worthwhile, and really, that whole process of just kind of, discovery and trial and error and all that type of stuff. I mean, that was quite a bit of work. And it took a while to, just kind of figure out and refine exactly what, I wanted to do, and, all that type of things. And, I think, very similar to Ashley's husband, I applied to like 60 some jobs, just to see, where, I could land and what I could do, and things like that. And along that journey, I uncovered some things that seemed quite unfair. For example, I was rejected from a job before I even formally applied to it. And I was, rejected the minute after like a job closed. And, so there are, weird things that can happen like that. But, and, sometimes those type of rejections can really hurt as well, but it just always helps to, just keep moving, keep trying. And also, sometimes there's just, maybe a lack of the full breadth of knowledge in terms of what exactly, you are trying to communicate, or what exactly something truly means. So, for example, with having an English degree, I could write pretty much anything and everything. But it's like, well, I see that you have written, like this, that, and the other thing, but can you really write this? I haven't seen that you have, like written something on this. And, you just really need to show that your skills can translate sometimes. So sometimes that is a bit difficult, particularly if you're just trying to write a cover letter or something along that line. But, whatever it is, you gotta keep swinging and keep trying, and, keep just trying to, move into the next, item or the next opportunity. Which kind of leads to just some of those overall general tips. So in terms of just some general job strategies, these were some that worked for me the best when it kind of, came to really paring things down. So number one, it was very helpful to have those, other experiences outside of academia. So for example, even though I was working within the college setting, I had some professors that noticed my writing skills, and they're like, hey, I have a grant project, come help me, work on it. And it's like, okay, again, trying to say yes to those opportunities. And, through that, it's like you gain experience as a writer and writing different types of texts, and, just communicating in a different way on a different level to a different audience. So it was very helpful to just kind of build out those skills in that way. And also some experiences just kind of got flung at me because when my dad, as well as my husband, came to me and was like, I am going to run for a local political office. It's just like, you're doing what now? And you want me to do what? So, it just, again, it's like I was writing campaign literature and mailers and things to put indoors and, all this sort of thing. And it's like, how do you, write and design and construct that to capture the attention of your audience? So again, more experience, more depth in communicating for, all that sort of things, which, really helped to, kind of fuel that, it's like, I really like applying, a lot of what I have learned about rather than, helping other people apply it. It's like I would like that opportunity to write and create and build and design things too, which, led me down that path of like, becoming the communication representative that, I was able to get with that position. And, also, I think it is important to set some sort of boundaries and parameters around, the items that are the most important to you. So for me, that was, making sure to have, a good, livable wage, to have some better work-life balance, because as an academic, outside of the, wonderful, 3-month break that, we can get, even though sometimes the break isn't really that much of a break, as we all know. I just, if when I was grading, I would work from 6 a.m. to sometimes 11 o'clock at night and have like 2 breaks in between. That wasn't good. It's like I was burning out on that type of schedule, and I just didn't want that anymore. And also location was important too, because I had, I have a husband, and, he had his job, and, I didn't want him to have to, move or uproot or, anything like that, because I wanted to work in a different state or, something along that line. And, he works as a lawyer. So he would have to get certified in a different place too. So that would just add additional complications onto things. So really staying within the state of Michigan was incredibly important. And, just to have more job stability, because as I said, as a fixed term academic, you're fighting for your job every day, or at least it feels that way. And then also defining the job search terms. So outside of academia, sometimes that's difficult to really hone in on, because it's like, okay, how does a different type of business or a different type of industry, communicate these skills? Because we don't necessarily use that same language and that same terminology, and just kind of determining exactly what that is And, pretty much I would just type in words in like, a job search engine and see what came up, and, to see if one set of, word choices led to a different set of word choices, and just kind of refine from there. It's like just type in communication and see what comes up, type in curriculum and see what comes up, and just kind of go from there. And then working on that translation of academic-based skills, again, this took a little bit of trial and error. Sometimes I had to present them in like a more business, like quantitative, type way, in terms of like, yes, I can manage products or, projects because, I, managed 80 to 100 students in a semester and made sure that they kept, on top of their, papers, and, made the progress that they needed to, and things like that. And, you, instead of teaching, maybe you're managing and supervising, or, whatever it is. So you really have to watch your verb sometimes, to make sure that that idea is coming across in that correct way. And, again, with trial and error, if you kind of phrase things one way and you're able to get a job interview off of that, then you did something successful and you caught someone's attention, and, something was right there. So continue building, on that. And I would also say to, again, in that spirit of keeping yourself open to opportunities, making sure not to overlook an entry-level position as well, because sometimes, you can network and move up and, all that sort of stuff. And, you won't stay in that entry-level position that long, or, maybe not at all. Maybe they can start you a level higher than, what something is actually at. So that can be important too. And lastly, I just wanted to mention that idea of showing versus telling. So it's one thing to like say like, oh yeah, I can, write something or use these particular skills or whatever, but it is going to make a much greater impact if you actually show that you can do that. So I was told that I was pretty much, given the current job that I have, because I was able to show that I could write a press release on, animal health. That is, I knew that, bovine tuberculosis was, a concern in the state. So I looked up a recent article and I wrote like a mock press release on it. And I used that as my writing sample for my position. And, just showing that initiative, and, the fact that what came out was, pretty, clear, showed that I could definitely, handle the work and what would be asked of me in the position that I currently have. So that helped to really directly connect the pieces of, yes, I do have the skills, I can apply the skills, I can do the job at the end of the day. So that was really, kind of that, good distinguishing item that really just helped to, lead to the current position as it is. So that is about all I have. So I think it's, instead of opening up to, general questions for me, I think we can open up to questions for everyone. Yeah. I can figure out how to stop sharing my screen. There we go.
Well, thank you all for sharing your stories. They're all different. They all had a couple of overlapping concepts. I really appreciate the time that you spent today. And I just want to let the audience members know that we are going to record the question and answer series. And if anybody here has to go, I just want to say, hold on just a second. I'm going to drop a quick advertisement there in our chat, okay? So make sure that you click on that. And then with that, please, take it away. Anyway, you're going to take us through the question and answer series.
Yeah, I saw that Piero dropped really a good question, and I miss Piero's voice. So is that okay if I let you in and ask the question yourself and to introduce yourself a little bit? Okay, I think it's yes.
All right. Can you hear me, Juno, or anyone?
Yes.
Yeah, so my question was like, I'm been recently, I'm Piero, fifth year PhD, so PhD candidate. trying to wrap up by December. And I came from Italy. And I've been recently, like starting from last January, applying for jobs, at least a couple of jobs per week. And I've been struggling by finding the right keyword to look for a job, right? The keyword job position. So in the question that I put, that I actually lost. So if you guys have any thoughts about like how to be aware of which kind of professional profiles, let's say, people can find. For example, recently I discovered the assistant research scientist that I didn't know about, or just spatial analyst, which is very common in our field since I'm in geography department. So yeah, what I'd like to know what your thoughts are on this, and thank you.
I can start if that's okay with everybody. So actually, the one thing that's popping up in my head, and you're probably not going to love this answer, but back when I was at MSU, I would do some benchmarking for employers. So they'd say, hey, like, how can I get more people to understand what my roles are? Okay, so let's look at some of those posting titles that are out there. And we'd run these reports and what are the most common titles that are out there, and let's get people aligned, employers aligned, so that students could find those jobs. And what we found is that there just isn't one title or professional profile or anything like that. It's just that employers, depending on their human resources, so the people behind their human resource, HR, the knowledge they have, the amount of time they have, they're going to be posting jobs with whatever it is that they think is right, or maybe, and actually in most cases, whatever it has been in the past. So a lot of times they're not looking and reevaluating their roles. So try not to be too long on this, but yeah, I think the best thing you do is, when I was talking about like what I looked at for in a job and how, I would look and see, the job posting and the keywords, I would get that to be very broad. And then you have to take time to look into those postings and see, do my stories align? Does my experience align? Does it look like something that I could do? Is it 50% align? Is it 30% align? If it's less than 50%, I don't know if I would apply. Maybe you applying, and just seeing what that feedback might look like. But aligning your experiences and stories with that with the description, that's going to be so much more valuable than just doing a query for like posting jobs, and understanding that every employer is different. And that is the one thing I learned. There's just no right or wrong way. Well, I think there could be a wrong way for employers to do, but I try to help employers understand that. And so they might have things out there they might not even be articulating. So I'm going to come all the way back around and say, your network is going to be your best bet here. This is where you learn about postings, learn about the jobs, learn about what it is. And then the searching and the keywords and everything, that's all second to it. And not all the time, but hey, I found out about this job. Oh, I found out about this role. Cool. How do I apply? Search. I found it. Here it is. Let's apply. But I would spend more time on networking and finding people to talk to about these roles, and then for funneling yourself into those roles.
Yeah, thank you. Any other ideas? I kind of take this Piero's question from an international student's perspective. It's so hard to network, even come up with the right word to network. Any other ideas about how to kind of contribute to Piero's question? Yeah, Gabriela.
I'm not a panelist, but I figured I would just reiterate what I put in the chat, which is sometimes I challenge myself to, instead of focusing on like a job title, to just be like, I need to remind myself like what project or product like I want to be pushing. I actually did science communication, and a lot of my colleagues in my undergrad like went to go work for companies that I had no interest in like promoting their product. And so when I moved into an environmental science group, I realized like I need to be looking for if that company or organization has the mission that I'm interested in, and then I can start looking for the places where my skills overlap with their job descriptions.
There's also listservs too, depending on what area, general area. I know, speaking from like the government standpoint, there are listservs, general listservs that you can select different keywords or different locations, and then you can just get emails if there's ever a job opening. So it could be more of a wide search opportunity for you to try to pursue that also.
I was kind of thinking the same boat, but instead of trying to guess the job title, just what you're interested. So maybe you're interested in being a assistant scientist, but what do you want to be a scientist in, and doing those listservs for that particular chunk of search term. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Piero, and all the answers. I really like all the stories, and either from master of all to the obvious choice, or for introvert to find the right position. I really want to ask about how did you manage your network? We listened a lot about how we need to network. And how did you manage to network, especially with the mentors and peers? It's so hard to maintain a mentorship and a peer relationship. Can you share some of your experience?
I can start, since I was the one that outed myself as an introvert. So it was a learning process, and I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, but I can tell you some things that worked for me. One terminology that I still use today is pleasant persistence. And so you can be easily overlooked as an introvert. If you send an email to someone, say, hey, can we meet? I just want to like get to know you, or I want to maybe work in your lab, or, you know, whatever reason is you're reaching out to someone, and they might be too busy to see it, and you're too shy to just cold call or walk into their office or something like that. But being pleasantly persistent is just over and over, be like, hey, I reached out to you a little while ago, I'm interested still, and, you know, just keep trying to contact people. And like I said before, it can just be the simple stepping into the room, that there's a meeting going on and you're such an introvert that you don't want to speak up, but something might be starting to discuss that you're like, I have so many good ideas about this, and it just like kind of bubbles out of you. You're like, I can't wait to like share what I know. And then everyone in the room is a little bit impressed. You get the attention of someone that they're like, oh, hey, let's talk about this more later. And so, you know, just think of it more as these tiny little micro interactions, instead of this big undertaking of networking that I need to spend 90% of my time doing. It's just like all these little tiny things.
I'd echo what Amber said. I think that's great advice. Also, if you have a connection with a mentor right now, and if they can introduce you, and even if they're the ones talking and you're just sort of standing there like listening, you in the back of your mind could be listening, and then that could be your opportunity. Like Amber said, I was with so-and-so, and you know, we did have a good conversation. I'd like to follow up with you. Well, there you go. That's your little shoe-in, is that you were at least present and you were, you know, engaged to a certain, you know, engaged based on your mentorship or your mentor interacting. So you can always, if you're a little shy and don't want to be the one to go out on your own. And again, every communication, every time you talk to someone new is considered networking. It doesn't have to be anything formal, like Amber explained. It doesn't have to be like the big suit and tie kind of thing. Anytime you start a conversation with someone new, that could count as network. You know, that could lead to something. You never know. And so I think that just don't put pressure on it. I mean, I know literally all of us said networking is key, but don't put pressure on it. Just see where the conversations go, and, you know, use one conversation as a bouncing or a leapfrog to another conversation, and use that as a starting point. And any little shoe-in you can use to help you, even if you may not be the one to be that bold person to do the initial talking, you could then use that later to initiate conversations.
Yeah, that's great. I start from small things and build your network along the time. Yeah.
I can add just really quickly. I know we've got 30 seconds or so, but I threw in the chat just having those back pocket stories. So if you are feeling a little shy or feeling a little bit like you're not ready, just practicing or understanding your experiences, just a few of those experiences so well that you can weave them into any conversation at any time. And that could be, as you know, it could be whatever those strong experiences are, but really building in those skill sets and being able to just pull them out whenever you're meeting with anybody, personally or professionally.
Well, thank you again, panelists, for joining us. I feel like this has been a great introduction to many of the topics that we're going to be fleshing out as we continue the series. So for those of us that have really enjoyed this conversation, which I think we all did, we found a little bit of ourselves in each of these stories. I encourage you to join us in our next upcoming webinar. Again, we are taking on anybody that's interested in joining us in like a one-on-one mentorship program with MDARD professionals and with their peers to meet weekly, discuss these topics and their progress in the non-academic job search. Please do join us by this Friday. And again, just send us your application. It's not going to be a competitive process at all. We just really hope that you're interested in joining us. If you cannot commit to a weekly check-in with us, you're more than welcome to keep attending these webinars. They're public, they're going to be recorded, and they're going to be uploaded to our website every time. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you again, panelists, and thank you again to all of our organizers and sponsors. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I dropped my email and Gabriella's in the chat. Feel free to contact us. Join us. It will be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any feedback or something that you'd like to see happening in these webinars, we love to talk about it. So it's been wonderful.